Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar of Soko Foundation and the series of scaling urban protests that we are doing with our partner CDN. My name is Masha, and I'm one of the members of Soko, a critical urbanism hub that aims to bring closer the topic of urbanism, alternative vision of the cities, and fighting for the social and the just cities to the civil society as well as to the wider masses and public. We're organizing non-formal education trainings, online courses, webinars, and other activities. We have today our guest, Palina from Belarus, who will talk to us about the events of 2020, 2021. But before that, I would like to give word to Igor from CDN to say a couple of words.
Hello, I am Igor. I'm Secretary General of CDN, so Cooperation and Development Network Eastern Europe, and we are empowered on a pan-European, Eastern European network of organizations made to empower the progressive-minded youth in Eastern Europe, and we are also organizing events and are the political voice of Eastern Europe within and beyond the green movement, and we are very happy that our alumni and members created the Soko Foundation. We are happy to co-host this event with you and Palina.
Thank you for the support, and we are still trying to establish it where it did not yet register. So yeah, I will tell you a couple of words about Palina, and then I will give you a word. So Palina is green activist, member of Young Greens of Belarus, and since 2017 she was involved in diverse political processes in her country, and in 2020 also participated first in the election observation and later in the demonstrations against the rigged elections. And in 2021, she had to leave Belarus due to political persecution. And Palina will talk to us about the background of these protests, the experiences of the society and tactics that were used in a protest series for more than 1 year. Unfortunately, Lukashenko is still in power and still continues to harass people of Belarus. Of course, we know that this webinar might be quite triggering, not only for us, but for the listeners as well. But we consider this is very important to voice these stories because unfortunately our world is becoming more and more authoritarian, and yeah, we just wanted to give space to learn and to hear the story. Palina, please take the floor.
Hello, and thank you, Masha. I will start the demonstration now. Actually, your description of me is much more full than what I wrote on the second slide about me. So thank you a lot. The presentation and what I will tell might be triggering for some people, but also I will try to be really positive. Even though Lukashenko is still in power, there are still really nice things that happen to Belarus. I will tell about them, and I will tell what actually brought us to this point that we are like not that bad, but somehow good. Okay, let's start. About me, what was already told, I think you all heard that I'm an activist, a green activist since 2016, member of Belarusian and Green since 2019. Was engaged in peaceful demonstrations in Belarus since 2017. I will tell later what happened in 2017 in Belarus. There was also a protest, a really huge one. And in 2020, as it was told by Masha, I started to participate in protests against the rigged elections in Belarus. Because of that, in 2021, I had to leave the country because Lukashenko's regime started to, like, really harshly to persecute those who protest and just activists. So it just started to be really dangerous for me to stay in the country. Unfortunately, I had to escape. Currently, I work for Belarusian independent media, and what I really hope for is to come back to Belarus soon. Okay. I'm telling you some things that I protested, and it led me to fleeing the country. But why was it necessary to protest in Belarus? You might ask this, and it will be a really good question. I will quickly explain you a short history of Belarus and why for us it is so important to show our opinions. So, since late 18th century, Belarus has been forcibly incorporated into the Russian Empire. Before that, we were in the I don't know how to say it in English, but in the big Commonwealth, let's say, I don't know, of Lithuania, and there we played a really like biggest part. Like Belarusian language there was the official language. Then it united with Poland, but then some bad things happened, and the territories of the current Belarus started to be a part of the Russian Empire. In connection to that, later it became a part of the USSR, where, of course, there were, as you might know, widespread violations of human rights. Now we call it as a Russian world, let's say, because from very early times, Russia and Russian Empire wanted to, I think, every part of this world to be part of Russia, and of course, Russia used a lot of and still uses a lot of violent methods to do this. But then in 1991, USSR collapsed, Belarus gained independence again, and it became a parliamentary republic. But then in 1994, presidential elections happened in Belarus, which are considered to be the only fair elections in modern Belarus. Lukashenko won those elections fairly, unfortunately. And then he quickly changed the system into presidential one. After that, Lukashenko began to drag the country back to the Soviet ideology and the Russian world. So I would say that we just had those 3 years of hope, but then Lukashenko just immediately took it over and just started to do everything back as it was in the USSR. This year is 30 year of Lukashenko being in power. For example, I was born in 1999. I have never seen any other president of Belarus in my life. When I was born, he was already there, and now I'm 25 and he is still there. What else did he accomplish during his rule is, for example, that he brought back the death penalty in Belarus. Now he actively scares political prisoners with that, those who opposes him politically. Also, he restored Russian language as the second official, but elevated it to the primary one. And now, especially since 2020, we can see that people can be imprisoned because of using Belarusian language in Belarus. Also, he intensified ties with Russia. Maybe this sentence is a bit harsh, but that's actually what's happening. And he just basically sold the country to Putin in exchange for maintaining his power. Also, especially after 2020, many people think that Lukashenko would not stay in power if not Putin, who supported and he still supports him financially. What else has Lukashenko done during his rule? He killed or imprisoned a lot of political opponents. For example, those who in 90s when he just came to power, those who opposed him were basically stoned and then killed. But there are no there is not such an evidence about this because everything was of course hidden. We can only like assume this, and also there are some well people who would say that it might have happened. And since 1994, there were no fair elections in Belarus, and all the elections that happened later, they were manipulated in favor of Lukashenko. For example, in 2020, he wrote that he had 80% of votes. In 2015, he wrote he had 80% of votes, even though it's really visible that he gained much less. And we even had a joke in 2020 that he had his 3% only, not more. Also, he brought back the Soviet ideology with the entire state mechanism subordinated to him. For example, all the courts are subordinated to him, and there is basically no legal way to oppose him. And also, countless human rights violations happened in Belarus, and much, much more. Of course, people try to protest, try to show their opinion, try to get rid of Lukashenko, and not only in 2020s, it might be, like it's the most popular protest in Belarus, but also many years earlier. It started from 1996 and 1997. It's called Minsk Spring. Basically, it was the year 1996 where there were some not amendments, I don't remember the correct word in English, but some changes made in Belarus. Lukashenko initiated them, and people were against them, so they started to protest. In 2006, there were another rigged elections in Belarus, and the name of that protest is Plosha 2006. This protest was connected to elections, and it's called like that because basically people were gathering in big squares or ploshchas in Belarus. And also it gathered a lot of people. In 2010, basically the same situation, also a big protest that happened for, I don't remember how many, but like for a few days or maybe weeks. And also it gathered a lot of people. After that, the situation in Belarus became really, well, stressful, and especially for Lukashenko. And a few months later, he basically committed a terrorist attack in Belarusian subway in Minsk. Of course, it was shown as some terrorist who made some terrorist attack, but then years later, people started to realize that it was made just to get attention to that attack, but not how he violated the elections. And 2017, this is basically the year when I joined the protests in Belarus. Why it happened then? Well, before I couldn't join because I was too small. In 2010, I was only 11. In 2017, the protest actually started in maybe like in the end of 2016, but in 2017, they started to be really mass. And it was connected to a decree that was also introduced in Belarus that asked people who are not working to pay money to the government, which is really weird because usually in normal countries, state pays for people who don't work, but in Belarus, people who didn't work had to pay. So people just became really angry and started to gather in protests. In Minsk, as I remember, like the biggest protest that happened was on March, on 25th of March, 2017, which is a so-called Freedom Day of Belarus, which is illegal in Belarus, but many people gathered in the center of Minsk. I think it was around 10,000 people or something like that. but also many people were arrested, many people were beaten, and basically for me it was the first time when I saw how protests actually happen in Belarus and how scary it might be. And 2020, 2021, another rigged elections, and yeah, I think you all heard of them when people started to protest in really huge numbers. And now I'll tell, yeah, it was up to 1 million people who protested in Belarus in 2020. Actually, the number might be bigger. It's just, I think the number was collected during the protest in August and September 2020, but there were many other protests. So yeah, number might be higher. Also, there were people who were not protesting on streets, but who were doing some other activities, let's say, to stop the regime and its activities. For now, I would say that the protest still continues, although many people have to leave the country. For now, we have up to 500,000 people who were forced to leave. And as of today, we have 1,375 political prisoners, or 1544. The number might be different because the first one is basically calculated by the biggest human rights organization in Belarus, and the second one is more like made by another human rights organization, and I think the second one is more correct. Just the first organization that does not recognize every political prisoner is basically a political prisoner. Regardless of this number, we also have a lot of people who were arrested in Belarus, and the number is also a few hundred, not hundred, but a few thousands. Just arrested, for example, with administrative cases and so on. Also, I would like to mention that, yeah, the number is getting lower because I really often give presentations about the situation in Belarus, but this number is getting lower just because many people already passed their terms in prisons and they get released, but not because they are getting released by some other reasons. So anything good that happened, as I told you, I will try to be positive. Although not everyone from Belarus might agree with me about this, but that's basically how I feel, how I see the situation. As I told you, Belarus was under really huge oppression, and Russian language was the major and still is the major language in Belarus. And if you, like before, if you spoke Belarusian language, you would just be assumed as someone weird, crazy, or someone who is, I don't know how to say, but like many bad things could, bad words could, you could get because of just speaking Belarusian language. But for now, after 2020, I see that the amount of people who use Belarusian language in their everyday life is increasing, and it became to gradually gain popularity. Also, Belarusian language is a really huge symbol of resistance right now, which is really cool. Also, cultural identity began to be more visible. People started to distance themselves more and more from Russian influence. Yeah, many people who participated in 2020 in protests in 2020 started to protest just because of rigged elections, but then when those protests were met with violence, many people started to go out to streets to show their disagreement with violence that happened in the streets. And then basically, slowly, it gradually started to influence more and more people, and people started to understand the, let's say, the cultural code of protest more, and that's how they started to identify themselves more like Belarusians. Also, many of us, as I already told you, had to leave the country. but still, those who left, they try to save Belarusian culture and Belarusian language even abroad. And many Belarusian cultural centers or businesses, mostly also culturally connected, were established abroad in other countries, which also, I think, for future will be really useful for us. Also, we have a really strong diaspora movement right now, and a sense of community and belonging, previously absent. Also, I think it's connected to the Russian influence that, and not only on just Lukashenko's regime, that it started, it tried to separate us, to show, as I told you, that like propaganda or Lukashenko himself, they used Belarusian language is something to be shame about. For example, all the time they told on television that speaking Belarusian language is awful. But and also because of that, many people started to feel like they don't belong here to this country. But after protests in 2020, it started to be really different, especially because of community organizing, which I will explain about later. But yeah, now we kind of feel that we are together, and it's really great. Protests were not only connected to just going out to streets, but we also had different other ways of protesting. For example, economical protest. I think the second one is just called Italian strike. The first one, labor strikes. Italian strike, yeah, it's basically what many independent media channels started to spread. That there is a way to protest just to behave on work as it's technically written on all the documents, and it just gradually stopped the work of the factories. And also labor strikes. Also, in Belarus, we try to stop everything from work because Belarusian state and the government, Lukashenko himself, they gained a lot of money from it, and it was really important to stop him from that, to just stop economically supporting him. Also, people chose to refrain from purchasing products linked to pro-regime companies. We even had a special app called Krama and still have it, which you can just use in stores, or if you go shopping, you can just scan the code of the product you want to buy, and if it's red, then it shows that the company is connected to the regime. And if you buy this product, then your money will go straight to the regime. Also, people try to avoid paying taxes. It might sound really funny because I know that in some countries, and just in Belarus also, it was popular not to pay popular not to pay taxes. But that time it was made on purpose, and it was also necessary to stop paying that much as we paid before. And just, yeah, people just try to avoid taxes they could pay. Also, we had this idea to avoid paying for state affiliated services. For example, massively people started to avoid paying for public transportation, and it also, I don't know how helpful it was in a large scale, but hopefully it gave us something. Another type of protest that we have is, as I call, just for fun or cultural protest. For example, people made different things in white, red, and white colors because these are the colors of our national flag. In Belarus, the regime uses also, when Lukashenko came to power, he just changed the national symbol to a more Soviet one. Now we have that red and green flag, a Soviet, almost a Soviet version of a flag, but without the Soviet symbols on it. But actually, the national flag is white, red, and white, and it's widely used on protest in Belarus. It was and still is used. So during 2020 protests, people started to do many things related to those colors. For example, those who worked in shops, especially like second-hand shops or something similar, they started to dress mannequins in white, red, and white clothing. Those who worked in state affiliated, I don't know how it's called, but like organizations that plant trees, for example, flowers in the cities. Some workers of those organizations just planted flowers in the city with white, red, and white colors. I myself saw such a combination near my home. It was really funny. And of course, graffiti, memes, and any other activities that basically not only show the opinion of people, but also this all united people a lot because of the actually because of fun that it brought and international support. What many of us did is giving presentations about the situation in Belarus or interviews for international media, and not only to international but also for Belarusian independent media to engage more and more people. We were also advocating for sanctions in Belarus. Unfortunately, when they were finally introduced, it was already too late. And organizing protests and cultural events abroad. For example, those who left earlier, let's say those who had to escape in 2020, they went and to other countries and started to do protests there. And still, we continue to do that to show that we are still here and we are still fighting. This is one of the photos from, I guess, Minsk, but I'm not sure. These factory workers and this, I don't know how it's called, but the sign says that strike is let's say fight against dictatorship or like push against dictatorship. And community organizing. I think this is the cutest form of protest we had in Belarus. But yeah, basically we had those neighborhood local Telegram chats and channels that were connecting people living in same house, same building, or same yard, I don't know, or same street. And there in those chats, we could just exchange information, we could help each other, we could also gather together to organize something. And what was organized, for example, we had a lot of neighborhood concerts, fairs, lectures, and etc. On the picture, you can see one of the local concerts in Belarus. Basically, people living in the same block of flats could just go outside in their yard and just organize something, and other neighbors could just come, and it was really nice. It was really good for us to understand that we are together and that we can trust each other. Yeah, and yard protests also happened, like a small local protests. Also, example from what I saw in my life, that just my neighbors, we could just randomly gather somewhere. Someone could write in the chat that, oh, something is going to happen on the street, you can come, and many people just went outside, and that's how basically without any particular hard organizing, we just gathered on the street and we had a protest there. And also, as I told, local Telegram chats and channels help together for larger urban protests together. Also, I would explain here that, as I told you, the regime, Lukashenko's regime and Putin's regime, they really try to use these tactics to separate everyone and to scare everyone. in Belarus during the protest, it was used that people who were, for example, coming back to their houses after protest, if they were alone, they were really easily attacked by the police. That's why it was important to be in a huge group of people. It was less risky for them to stay not imprisoned and safe. That's why also we, like, together with neighbors, we could just go to the protest and from it. That's basically it. Sorry for my mixed English. I don't know how to speak today. But if you feel inspired after my presentation, you can donate for Belarus using the link. This is basically the website that helps those Belarusians who suffer from the regime, mostly for those who had to escape. And that's it. Any questions?
Yes, questions are already here. Thank you, Palina, a lot for your inputs. I think we will open up this much more through the questions. So the first question is, what do you think is the role of community organizing in protests and maintaining the consistent engagement of citizens during the protest?
Yes, I told you, I think one of the most reasons was safety, although although it was also risky in the end, but still, if you trust your neighbor, if you trust someone you hang out with, then you can go to a protest together. And if the group is big enough, then, as I told you, it's less risky to be detained. Plus, I would say that in 2020 we suffered a lot, and we still suffer a lot. But in 2020, it was really harsh to be in that situation mentally. It was really complicated, and I remember that just going to some sort of a concert in your yard, or just, I don't know, hanging out with your neighbors in some other activity, this brought a lot of pleasure. This brought a lot of relaxation after everything you've seen on those protests. So yeah, it was really nice, and I think for us even now it's really important. I see that many people, even though those who had to leave, they still have a contact with their neighbors, and still we are kind of together even being far away from each other.
So you would say organizing was happening mostly through these neighborhood levels and people who knew each other, not necessarily
Yeah.
interest-wise, for example, as it happens in some other countries.
Yeah. Organizing and just mental support.
Okay, thank you. Another question, what are some tactics of staying safe during protests that you can remind others?
Oh, I think another separate presentation should be made on this topic. There are a lot of tactics. From what I remember, what we had, maybe I already closed the presentation, but yeah, on the picture you could see that many people were in masks and in glasses and with some sort of hats on their heads. It's because it was important to not to be recognized. Those cameras that are around the cities, they could identify the person, and then some months later a person could just get arrested because of this. So it was really important to hide their personality and everything connected to this. So many people were using different tactics about this. I don't know about other countries. I know that it works for Belarus, unfortunately, because our situation is really horrible there. But yeah, this also, from what I remember, it was recommended to not to bring your mobile phone with you at all. Also because those all the SIM cards that are inside the phones can be later, well, the location can be viewed by state bodies, and they can see that the person was on the protest, and then also detain a person. Even some hours, days, or months later, still the person can be detained because the location was on that exact time, on that exact day, on a protesting place, let's say. Yeah. I don't know how helpful it will be, but I remember from my personal experience, I was never detained, surprisingly. I was almost detained many times, but never fully. But I remember that it was useful to not to run away from them. If you see that there are a lot of police around, the best idea was just to stop and behave like you're just here, I don't know, doing some shopping or like walking around, not protesting at all. And somehow I think those right police people were trained to actually catch those who are running away. And if you just stay, if you just don't do anything, I mean, if it's already like too late, if there are already a lot of them around, it was better to just stay. And for me, it helped a lot of times.
Okay, so assessing the situation and staying safe as much as possible. Okay, thank you. Another question which might be difficult to answer because it's about what do you think if Putin did not support Lukashenko at some point, do you think that people would achieve their goal without this financial support that happened end of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, or beginning of 21?
2020 to 2021. Oh, wow. I think even if they would not help him with money, they will just exchange him for some other person who they are interested in. Meaning that even if Lukashenko, like even if people get rid of Lukashenko in 2020, I think Putin will just not leave this country just as it is, and of course he would just play someone else who is interesting for him. Yeah. So don't know. We have a lot of arguments now in Belarus, like in the Belarusian media space, let's say, about this. Unfortunately, now I see that probably we didn't have any chance, but still we tried, and still now, in later in the future, I think it will be really helpful for us.
Yes, the struggle continues. Next question. Did you notice if some cities in Belarus or abroad gained their new symbolic value after the protests? So you lived in Minsk, right? So that's, I guess, also is important to say. How were other cities involved?
Well, I didn't understand the question, I think, correctly. Could you please elaborate on this? What is meant by symbolic?
Yeah, for example, in Ukraine after the war, for school or war began, many cities became like receive their new value. For example, some of them became kind of the place that can save people from like Lviv or people who or city who will like sorry for my English, but I was not prepared to speak right now. Yeah, for example, Kharkiv receive also kind of image of the city that will stand despite all the circumstances and so on. Or some occupied people cities also receive some very symbolic image right now for like Mariupol. Maybe someone else or your experience in Belarus. I don't know. Just a question. That's why my question.
Yeah. Thank you a lot for elaboration. I think there was quite a few cities like that. But first of all, what I want to mention, what you reminded me with this question, is that we kind of try to bring value ourselves to anything we represent. For example, during the protests in Belarus, people started to create Belarusian national flags, like white, red, and white, but with some sort of symbol of their street, district of the city, or city itself. And it's used even now. If you, for example, go to, I don't know, I went to a concert of Belarusian band in Riga, and I saw people bringing their flags of their towns, Belarusian towns and cities. It was quite nice, and I think it's something that unites a lot. And there were especially like really meme examples. For example, we have a street in Minsk called Golodeda, which is probably a surname, but literally translated like naked grandfather. So people from that street made white, red, and white flag and look naked Lukashenko with his ass there. It was super funny, and it was just it just became really popular in Belarus. But about cities that protested a lot, I think from what I remember and from what I feel now is that we had this symbol of brave people striking in Svetlovodsk, because Svetlovodsk is a small town, not a small, but a town in Belarus. Not Svetlovodsk, sorry, Solivodsk. It was Solivodsk, and it is a place where I don't know the name in English, but Shachty, if you know. Mines? Yeah, mines.
Mines, yeah.
Where there are a lot of miners, and they started to strike a lot. And basically, they just made their organization of strikers, and they were really, really active. And I think this town became really popular because of that, and because they just represented the town. And also, I remember Grodno or Horodnya. Also, it is one of the regional centers in Belarus, just in the very west of Belarus. And I remember there were also like people were really, really, really active, and it started to just be spread around. And now also we have this symbolic city, also regional center, Brest or Bielsk, but mostly pessimistically, negatively, because many people there were arrested because of one criminal case. I think like a few thousand people received criminal articles because of that case. It's called Krivotная splava, meaning that dance you do in a circle, hanging each other by arms. So it is called like that because people were protesting in Bielsk in the center in the protest, and they were dancing and singing national songs, and then they were recognized with cameras, and many people got imprisoned. And still, the situation is really pessimistic, but still there are a lot of symbolic things happening about this. And even a few weeks ago, there was a short movie published about this case and about people who protested and about city itself.
Thank you. Okay, more questions if you're up to it. Yeah, I know it's also quite demanding for you probably to remember all these things. So yeah, okay.
For me, it was really pleasant to prepare this presentation because I don't know, it gave me a lot of pride and it was really nice.
Yeah, you should be proud, each and every one of you who was there. Okay, then if you want to continue, here is the next question. Was it easy to move around in Minsk during the protests? How did different groups use different sized spaces, and how was police, or I assume any kinds of police that you have, was behaving in different kind of spaces?
Amazing question.
Were riots different?
Yeah, amazing question. I told you example of Belarusian protests during a few years, and two of them were called Ploshcha 2006, Ploshcha 2010. So the square protest, and this is basically was one of the reasons why in 2020 there was no square protest, because right police already knew how to arrest people there, and they had a lot of tactics to basically just detain people. That's why we started to have other solutions, and we started to gather just like in streets, for example, or just in the yards or some different places. And also going to community engagement, I told you we had a lot of small local protests. Also, it was really nice because sometimes people, for example, if there was a big protest happening somewhere in the center or like in some areas of Minsk, and sometimes people who like didn't want to go there to that big space, they just decided to stay in their neighborhoods and gather there, and it was really a really good tactics, because when they started to gather in just small streets, in their own streets, and when there were a lot of them, a lot of people like that in different districts of cities, police could go, for example, to one place, but not going in a huge amount to the places big protests. And then small protests, it was much more successful because people knew their neighborhoods and they could run away easily and hide somewhere because they knew the location.
I have actually clarification, adjustment question, because you mentioned at the peak it was 1 million people protesting. So maybe somebody doesn't know how big is population of Belarus.
Oh yeah,
population
I
of
wanted to
Minsk.
mention
So yeah,
1 million, but I mean not in Minsk, but in different across the whole country. But in 2001, so we had I think 9 million people. Now it's about 500,000 people less.
it's from who stayed in Belarus, right? So 500,000 people stayed in Belarus.
No, 500,000 people left, and that's why the number is less. So now
Okay.
it's like 508. What do I say? 8 million and 8.5 millions of people now in Belarus, approximately. There is no real statistics in Belarus anymore, and actually after 2020, the state even doesn't try to count because they are scared to see the numbers. So yeah, many people left the country.
Yeah. Okay, maybe a couple of more questions, and yeah, then we can slowly try to wrap up. Can you tell us more about economic boycotts? Do government members owe a lot of property? And there is another question, which maybe you can answer them together. What is the connection of capital and elites of Belarus and the government of Belarus?
Oh, let's start with the last one. So basically, those who are allied, they're connected to the government itself. We don't, or maybe we have rich people, but mostly all of them are connected to the government, to the state, or to Lukashenko. Those who are not connected, Lukashenko basically just comes and steals their businesses and steals their money. This is what happening a lot after 2020. Like many business people are detained just because of having huge businesses, not with any particular reason. Yeah, so mostly state people, like those who connected to the state, they are rich. What else? Economic boycotting, meaning boycotting products or.
Yeah, I think that's what the author meant, the products, the goods that are being produced.
But could you
by-
please repeat the whole question? I just already forgot.
Can you tell more details about economic boycotts? Do government members owe a lot of property? So I assume the boycotting was the government members or people close to Lukashenko owe, like the businesses that they owe and what these businesses produce. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, but not every company in Belarus is related to those who are connected to a state. As I told you, those who are not connected, mostly they just lose their businesses. But still, in 2020, we had quite a few businesses that were more or less independent from Lukashenko. But those who were connected, yeah, we had that Karma app. You still can Google it, and it still exists and it's still useful. I think it's even useful in Ukraine, but I'm not sure. I just saw their advertisement. I think it might be useful in Ukraine. Like you just scan and you just see, uh, you just see the product if it's produced by a state, connected to a state company, and if it's connected, then you just don't buy it. And we had, yeah, I remember also media were writing about such companies, so people could just be aware and not buy, not buying anything from those companies.
Well, it's really good that there are still other companies that are not in connection with Lukashenko and his friends or whoever they are. Let's see if there are more questions in the chat. Maybe this will be the last call for the questions. And one question that we have is, can you tell us a bit about the 3 women, including Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, and how they affected the movement?
Yeah, I don't know why I haven't mentioned this. I actually tried not to focus on the political, well, protests, and that's why I probably haven't mentioned them. I wanted to show more just like usual people. But yeah, we had those 3 women. How it happened, just because all the main candidates to presidential posts were imprisoned, and that's how. One of them, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, is a wife of currently political prisoner but ex-candidate to presidential post Sergei Tikhanovsky. Then Veronika Sapkala, also wife of another ex-candidate, and well, she's really tricky one. And Maria Kolesnikova, she is, yeah, she was in that, how was it called, shtab, not shtab, but like in that campaign of one
Committee, I guess.
committee, I don't know, yeah, like election committee of one of the ex-candidates as well, who is also imprisoned now. And they just decided together, because all of them were imprisoned, and they just decided to continue doing what they did. And they became a symbol, not only because they represent some sort of like political movements, but also because they are women. We had this idea, and what from what we saw in protests is that much less women were arrested actually during like average protests, because the regime is really patriarchal one. It usually is with many regimes. So yeah, women just started to be symbol of that protest, and there were also symbolic marches in Belarus. For example, on Saturdays we had those women marches, and yeah, and because so we just had that idea that less people will get arrested if women will go. But it also started with one of the days when it started with really like small protests, how women started together. Because after the election day on 9th of August, when there was a lot of violence happening, and the days after, I think it was 13th of August, when just some women from different NGOs, and not only from NGOs, but those who are somehow related, they decided to gather in one of the districts of Minsk, and they decided to gather in white clothing, showing that they are just like against the violence that they're playing and stuff like that. And it's also really symbolic for Belarus, because Bela means white, and we have this everything is white in our traditional things. And yeah, so it was really, I think, a good thing.
Would you say it was feminist and inclusive protests?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like we had really different types of protests. They started even to be like on Sundays we had those general protests when all the people were gathering. Then Saturdays women protests. Then some other days like Mondays, I remember it was protest of retired people. Yes, and then like some other, and I remember there were a lot of them, and also on one of the protests, or maybe on a few ones, people gathered not with their like neighborhood communities, but with their professional communities. Like there was a march of cultural workers, march of someone else, and it was nice. And also people from same universities, for example, gathered together.
Okay, so we have the last question, and then Igor and I will make small closing speech, and that would be it, unless something else pops up in the chat or you will want to add something more. How do you see the future after the disappearance of the dictators?
I see it happy and light, and like, yeah. But if serious, then it will be complicated, of course, because everyone will just fight. Actually, what we already have now, like many people fight because we are so different, and it's not understandable who is like, well, democracy. And I think it will continue to be like that, but in Belarus.
Yeah, I would maybe rephrase the question a bit for you. What would it mean? Like, how do you see future for Belarus without dictatorship? Like, what kind of things would start happening? Democracy is
Democracy,
one simple word, but yeah,
but
what would you like to see?
Also, it will be real Belarus, not a part of Russia. With its own language, with its own culture.
And on independence.
Mm.
Okay, thank you so much, Palina. If you want to add a couple of last words, here is your space. No, okay. Igor?
Yes, thank you very much, Palina, for this and this can reassure that we will be there and Belarus. And thank you
Живи вечно.
for this recommendation for like.
Yes, Живи вечно, indeed. And thanks again for inspiring us and continuing to fight for your country from abroad. I want to announce hereby two next webinars that we will have on 14th and 21st of May. And on 14th, we will have speaker from Serbia who will talk to us about another, not as big protests as it was in Belarus, but still quite big ones in Belgrade, and how this movement became a political party later. And Artem Vidva, our speaker for 21st of May webinar, was participating in Maidan protests organizing in Kiev, and he will talk more about that in details. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Palina, again. Thank you for listening to us. And yeah, hope to see you in upcoming webinars.
Дякую, до побачення.
Дякую. Bye.